One of the series you can find on my YouTube channel is everything related about coffee, because that is something I am very passionate about. And one thing I want to convey through this particular series is to break down and demystify whatever intimidating factors there are into getting into specialty coffee. And you can watch that video here. One important point that I make in that video is that there are so many flavor profiles that you are bound to find one that you like. And one aspect about creating flavor profiles is through roasting coffee. Today I'm very excited to show you a video that I've been working on that really showcases the importance of specialty coffee and why I love it so much. One of my friends here in San Francisco owns a coffee roaster called Proyecto coffee. My friend's name is Fernando, and he's going to be running us down everything about specialty coffee. First of all, you'll hear his story of how he got into coffee, why it's important to him, and then we'll go into more particular aspects about coffee, such as the roasting process, why roasting is important, what is specialty coffee as viewed from a specialty coffee roaster, and lastly, my friend Fernando will teach us why exactly he has so much passion and intent in curating a selection solely focused on Mexican and Latin American coffee.
Bringing out the uniqueness of each bean essentially, because each one is different, right? Yeah. Even with a blend, you know, you pick different coffees that bring different components to a table that make like a puzzle into a complete picture. Or even like wine, right? Like think of varietals, think of like a Pinot Noir or a Cab are gonna be somewhat similar, but still very different. That's kind of the, you know, the same concept here. Each country kind of brings its own like character, and that's why roasting, you know, is so important to like really hone in on that. And even then, like one of these coffees, if we roast it differently, like we can roast it, you know, probably 100 different ways. To discerning palate, it'll taste slightly different. So my name is Fernando Diaz. I'm the founder of Proyecto Coffee. Proyecto means project. Diaz is the family last name, and coffee self-explanatory. But really the reason was because we wanted to help to rebuild and revitalize farms and legacies. And so, you know, my family's a coffee farming family, and that's really where we're rooted, and I wanted to bring that to this side, to the States, and be able to authentically translate that and also, you know, give the people like a product that is part of our history and culture. So this is... Hola! Hola! This is my dad. He started roasting with us like, what, 2 years ago? And really like the company started back in 2014 is like when we just started, like little by little, kind of just, you know, 1 pound at a time essentially. I was roasting at home. I didn't even have like a commercial roaster. We were just trying to figure it out. And in 2016, we got a tiny little like 6 pound roaster. And just last May, we got this big boy. My family's been in coffee for generations. Like I heard stories that my dad told me about coffee and like grandfather, and how even his grandfather, you know, like they would go and like pick the coffee. Right. It was like a whole family affair, right? It's like lines of like donkeys pulling and like just with the coffee on their back. But now like my grandfather's farm is like nowhere near that, right? It's like the whole story of agriculture. You know, developing countries, like farming is not sustainable. And so I kind of wanted to step into like the culture and heritage of what our family had been doing, the legacy essentially. Started buying a few pounds of my grandfather's green coffee, figuring out like along the way, like how the heck do you even roast, like what's the profiles. The whole idea was like, hey, let's help rebuild my grandfather's farm. Let's start there, like that's our mission. You know, I grew up in the States. I'm a byproduct of, you know, the diaspora, not just the Mexican diaspora, but like the Latin American diaspora. Nicaraguenses, El Salvadorians, you have people from Honduras, that you kind of all grow up together and kind of, you know, learn about their cultures, you know, being part of that diaspora. So we have coffee from Honduras, coffee from other parts of Mexico, coffee from Colombia, Nicaragua. And so we want to like specialize in what is Latin American coffee. At the same time, you know, our crown jewel, like our cornerstone coffee is my grandfather's coffee in that region. He's only one person in millions of people. His story is not unique. The only thing that makes it unique is that, you know, I'm able to tell his story and that family's story. Kind of a little bit of like, you know, why I started that with that desire and that intention of being able to authentically tell, starting with our family story, and then being able to kind of just also like curate and be able to highlight other stories that are very similar to us, which is why we're focusing on what is Latin American coffees. The job of roasting is to kind of keep the consistency, meaning making sure that you're recreating the same roast time after time, because that's what people come to expect, but also being able to highlight the uniqueness of that one coffee that you're roasting. You want to highlight what's in there, and making sure that that is consistently brought up. So for us, the way we roast is we're really focusing in on that point where we're really wanting to develop a lot of the sugars. The general process, so you can see, right, they call it green beans because they're pretty green. The general idea is to turn the beans brown. From the start, you first go through this period where it's like called the drying phase, and that's really where like a lot of the moisture, you're starting to like remove a lot of the moisture from the bean, and then it starts going from like this like green to like a pale green to then to a yellow. And at that point is typically when it's considered that like a lot of the moisture content has kind of left. And then from there you enter in the second phase, which is where your chemistry is happening, but you're developing your sugars, you're developing your acidity. That's really kind of like the window of where you're bringing out the flavor of the coffee. And then from there it goes into the third phase, which is usually after the first crack, right? So the first crack is kind of towards the end of that second phase, taking up all this energy. The heat has been introduced to the bean and it can no longer hold it, so like lets out this crack, first crack. And then from there you start going into your third phase, which is the development phase. Kind of temper the acidity, kind of bringing down a little bit percentage of the time that you're going through. You're developing the body. If you're going to be doing an espresso, you're kind of like elongating the development time, bringing out that body, bringing out some more like viscosity in the coffee, depending on what you're going to be doing with it or using it for. It's kind of also that give and take of knowing how far you want to take it. We only take, like, as I was saying, like one coffee to like the second crack. But even then, like, it gets right to the beginning of the second crack. I consider like a medium roast. And then from there you can take it to a French roast where it's just gonna get super oily, super burnt. But we really don't take it, we don't take any of our coffees there. Like a first crack, you're pretty close to like a light roast, right? When you're around like maybe 15-ish seconds, it also depends on the roaster. Around that time frame, you're like at a light roast. Like for example, our light roast, we take it to like 400 degrees. Our medium roast, we take it a little bit further than that. As I said, traditionally speaking, like even if you take it to a medium roast, that would be to the second crack. Our medium roast is nowhere near to the second crack. So it's also like a personal like decision. We do everything very analog. He has all the roasts logged. This is literally a log of every single roast that has been done. Each crop comes in once a year. You always want to make sure you have a fresh crop. I mean, if you think this is labor intensive, like farming is like I've personally never done it, but I've seen it and I've heard it from my dad. Like it's a whole nother beast. Over there, it's like humid, it's hot as heck, and they're, you know, picking everything by hand. Yeah. So like every single like seed that you see has been, if it's coming from a small farmer, it's been picked by hand. It's a lot of kind of the bigger, more commercial farms that pick with the machine, but most of that's like in Brazil. But for a lot of the other like countries, it's all by hand. Like a small batch is I would consider it to be like a lot like this, right? I mean, there's smaller guys than us, and then there's bigger guys than us that are still considered small batch. But I think small batch is really when you have the ability to have a lot of like manual input to what you're doing. So being able to like, you know, scoop up the beans, right? Then put the beans in the hopper, and then having all this like manual interaction with the machine is what I would consider to be like a small batch roaster, right? Me personally, this is like personal opinion too, right? Bigger companies that, you know, most of the whole thing is automated. Like they toss in like a full bag. One of these bags is 152 pounds, and it gets, you know, siphoned in. Then at that point, I think you're kind of like no longer, you know, small batch, because like a lot of that like manual element is like left out. All right, so to wrap it up, so as I said, right, our spectrum is kind of like when we go from light to dark, it's not like a wide spectrum, right? So green for us means it's a single origin coffee, whereas red, it means it's a blend. This one's from my grandfather's coffee farm, so I was saying this was a Oaxaca, Mexico. It has a nice acidity. It's more of on the sweet side, but has like this nice buttery sugar to it. And then we have a medium roast. For example, this is like what would be like our baseline medium, a good representation of like where medium is at. This one's Esencia, so it's a 4-component blend, which is Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, and Colombia. Another single origin medium roast, which is this one, Yasin Bey. This one's a direct trade. We just started working with the producer. A dark single origin. This one, Mine Harvest, it's not going to be overpoweringly dark, but it's just going to have enough body where it's like you're going to be able to feel the weight of it, you know. But it's like black cherry, burnt caramel, cacao, so a little bit heavier note. And then finally we have like a seasonal blend, right? This is like a light medium. It has an Ethiopia Yirgacheffe and then an El Salvador natural coffee. Really unique. Someone can really get lost in it. You know, Latin America is huge, right? And as I said, like we kind of just focus on the continental, what is considered North, Central, and South America. They all have like their unique characteristics. African coffees are like also very unique and wild. And I think because of different processing methods, which has made them like really unique, that Latin America has kind of, in my opinion, always been kind of considered more like the bulk coffee. Until recently, like really starting to explore the uniqueness of it, like different processing methods, different growing methods that are really like showcasing like the wide range of profiles that are available in Latin American coffees. Everyone, like, I think has in their mind like Africa is unique, this and that, and it is, right? It is, like, clearly that's the challenge. Like, let's see if like Latin America can also produce like and kind of come out of the gates with new and different stuff, which I think they are. The commercial market is dominated by Colombia and Brazil, and it's like a lot of that is bulk coffee. Latin America kind of gets stuck in that oftentimes, like, and you think, okay, maybe Colombia is coming out with something super swank, but then you forget about Mexico, right? Or like even like these unknown states that you're like, oh, how the heck is that coming from that state? It's been producing coffee, but now it's like, oh, that unexplored gem. And so I think that's part of the perception that everyone's like has tons of information on Africa, but like a limited information on Latin America, that I don't think they've quite kind of explored it, and they kind of get pigeonholed into like, oh, you're only producing bulk coffee, or I only know good coffee from Colombia, right? Because Colombia is done like a great marketing job of exporting the idea of good coffee from Colombia, but you know, Mexico's also producing some bomb stuff. Costa Rica, Panama, like those guys are like winning some of the top lots in auctions.
So as you can see, the world of specialty coffee is so much work. Through this video, I hope you could see one aspect along the coffee chain, which is roasting. You know, as consumers, we usually focus only on the product that we receive in front of us, i.e. brewed coffee. But for me, I find it very important to talk about and showcase these people, such as my friend Fernando, who are part of that step in making a raw product into something very delicious that we buy into a commodity. And while roasting is the last step before it reaches the consumer, I hope to eventually show you guys coffee at the source. Meaning coffee being grown, picked, harvested, dried, fermented at a coffee farm, which I will be doing as soon as I get back to the Philippines. Hopefully you found this video informative, insightful, educational, and kind of broke down any stigma that you have over getting into specialty coffee. You can check out my friend's coffee at San Francisco Ferry Building, follow them on Instagram at Proyecto Diaz, and they even sell and ship via e-commerce on their website, so you can get coffee in all of America.